I ended up in water, I would say, due to divine forces. I think if you were to look at where I started, I might be the least likely to have ended up in water. My mother and her sister and mother came to Canada as displaced people after Second World War. She was in her 20s and left everything behind because of the war. And they had the choice of either coming to Canada, the United States, or Australia, and they chose to come to Canada. So they came to the country, didn't speak the language, and tried to survive, basically. They worked for a family in Montreal for the first year who sponsored their trip over. So in some ways it was to pay back for somebody who paid for them to get out of that war-torn part of the world. And after that, they made their way to Toronto and they had hoped to go all the way to British Columbia, but they never made it past Toronto. So I grew up in Toronto. I am first generation Canadian. I am first generation going to university or completing a degree. And not just one, but three. I have a family of five. There are five siblings, and most of them went on to become entrepreneurs or worked in administration, but I was the one who took that academic route. And the reason why I say it's by divine forces is because I didn't grow up in an environment with mentors to encourage me to take this path. I started off doing a lot of what were the hopes and dreams of my mother, to get an education. To a university education meant a great deal, and something that she was deprived of because she couldn't complete because of war. And so I did it almost for my love of my mother, but also it was expected in some ways. But that transition from doing something for others to doing something for yourself because you grow passionate about it certainly happened to me the more that I took courses, had opportunities, and continued on this journey. So much so that I effectively haven't left university since. So. And they traveled at that time being Russian-speaking Ukrainians. And it's interesting that my grandmother was born in a part of the world, a country that no longer exists. And we talked a lot about the changing boundary of nation states and how it's hard for some people to identify with a certain country because where they were born no longer is there. But my mother was born in Kiev, but her father was a land surveyor for the government and worked throughout Russia. And so what we would call Russian-speaking Ukrainians. Very interesting, almost 50 years later, seeing what's happening right now. I'm very empathetic to the plight of the Ukrainian people. And for similar reasons, an intrusion of Russia into a country that needs to make a stand against them. Yeah. Bessarabia, which is a country that intersects right now Romania, Moldova is the area. And it's interesting because when she was born, not when she was born, when she was a young person and met her husband, my grandfather, they all wanted to leave for Russia because Russia was the place of opportunity, of progress. And so that was ironic now that the country that they sought to live in is the country that they became displaced from down the road because they were taken as prisoners of war. And when you're taken as a prisoner of war from Russia, you're basically considered a traitor, so you can't go back, and they had no options. It was really when I went to university, I was one of the few from my high school. So it wasn't as if there was a cohort that was there. And going to the University of Toronto, which is the biggest university in Canada, I felt very lost within the system. You'd be in classrooms of 1,000 people, and I was very shy and didn't kind of seek out talking to faculty. But I remember in second year, I had one course and it was one instructor. And I was very quiet and I just did the work. But she came and it was in ecology and aquatic ecology. And you can see the trajectory that I took from that. But it was that one individual, her name was Rosemary Mackay, and she taught stream ecology. And whatever she did, she just made me feel visible. She made me feel valued. And it's almost like it's just like a faucet. You turn the tap on and everything just could come out. And it was just one person. And I think often about the serendipity and opportunity in my life, that there have been a sequence of individuals, not hundreds, not dozens, but maybe 3 or 4 that came to me at a moment and turned that faucet on. And then I was unleashed to do amazing things. And so the first one was Rosemary Mackay in my second year. She turned me on to ecology and a passion I didn't even know I had. Another one was Henry Regier, who taught me about systems thinking in my fourth year. And the third one would be Joe Whitney, who was a geographer. And he's the one who took me around the world to, first of all, to China, then Vietnam, and then really working with communities at risk. And that kind of defined the path that has been my foundation ever since. I would say not offhand. I'm inspired by things that I read that seem to help me along in different segments. But I feel that I'm continually changing. I think that when people look at me, they see that I'm always moving and moving, whether it's in terms of intellectual pursuits, whether it's moving in terms of physical activity, whether it's moving to connect different things. I'm a very dynamic and moving person. And I think as a result, I'm always evolving. And as you evolve, different leaders kind of inspire you. There's one that I have to say that really stuck with me, from Roberta Bondar, who is the first female Canadian astronaut. And her statement was that what it meant to be lucky, a lucky person. And it was about luck. A lucky person is one who sees or is presented an opportunity and is bold and brave enough to pursue it. And many of us are given opportunities, but it's not at the right time, or we're not prepared for it, or we don't see it. But lucky people are ones that have those opportunities that come. And it's in that moment that you feel confident enough, brave enough, bold enough to go through it. And I feel that I've been incredibly lucky in my life to have the coincidence of opportunities presented and a strength, even though shy, but still strong enough to be able and brave enough to pursue some of those opportunities. Well, I think we're privileged to have opportunities. I'm fully aware that some are living in areas where they just don't have those opportunities. I'd like to be able to create opportunities for others. And I've spent a lot of my professional work for doing that. My partner in life sometimes calls me the Mother Teresa of academics. I'm not sure if that's a compliment or not, but it's about seeing people that you really want to offer those opportunities because you could see such tremendous potential in them. So I really try to pay it forward to others to have those opportunities. Sometimes they're not ready and therefore not lucky, but sometimes they are, and that's pretty transformational when you get to witness that. But I do, it's hard to imagine because, like you said, for you and I never had a roadmap. I never had, well, this is what I'm going to be when I grow up. In fact, I still feel that I'm evolving, and I don't know what I will do next year. I don't know what I will do next, but I do feel that I'm completely open to opportunities and excited by them. And in some ways, I think I need that because it enables you to be creative, um, and and I think I would find life a bit boring if it was very predictable. And look at you, like meeting you, and it was one day, one workshop, right? And you think about, look what we've done. This is amazing. And it's because you and I are similar, and you just get it done. You see something, let's just do it, right? I really keep grounded by the relationships that I have that I hold near and dear. And most of them are with my immediate family, my partner in life, who is also an academic and who understands the journey, so to speak, and my two children. I knew immediately when I had my first daughter, and obviously with my second as well, that my life was changed forever. No matter what pursuits I had, once I had children, it was like it just all made sense to me. And our relationship is deep. It continues to evolve, and I definitely think that's what grounds me. I do have a lot of balls in the air, and I'm mindful of some of the other conversations that I've been on with interviews. And someone talked about compartmentalizing your life. That's hard for me to do because so much of one thing bleeds into the others. My daughters are now academics. They are in university. We share a lot of things. Things kind of, there's no fixed boundary. Everything bleeds one into the other. But I do think it's more in time that I compartmentalize. And one of my students really said something that resonated with me, like there are today problems and issues to work on, and then there are future problems. And don't worry about the future. Wait till the future to start worrying about them. Deal with the ones in the moment, that what you can do today and now. And that helps a lot. And that enables me to have a very full plate, but I focus on the most pressing one, or the one that needs attention today, and worry less about those that come next week or next month or next year. And that, I think, why that's important. I mean, most of us do that anyways, but training your brain not to worry about the future, but only to, because that's just wasted energy. And when you want to conserve that energy, apply it to what you need to do today. I've heard that before. I don't know if that was on one of these interviews or whether that was something that maybe one of the diplomats, maybe was it in Ljubljana? I can't remember, but I remember that conversation and being very intentional in what you do. So I think that speaks to having three purposes to justify trips, but it's also um, having three purposes to guide any single thing that you work on as well, whether it's traveling or not. What are the benefits? I also remember a very famous water scientist in Canada and globally. He recently passed, and his name was David Schindler. And you can imagine someone like him being pulled in every different direction, and the number and volume of opportunities that he would present. And he ended up having to triage every single one of them and make decisions. And I think maybe talk about impact, what you do, what is the likelihood of the impact, and how big is it? And that helps guide you as well in making decisions about what you should do and what maybe you can enable others who are less taxed and maybe still growing their leadership abilities to do. Well, surprisingly, it was relatively recent, and it would have been in Chicago in December of 2022. And when I became inducted as a fellow of the American Geophysical Union. Now, I'm in other societies and other fellows, but that one in particular was my very first conference that I went to as a PhD student, was with that organization. Throughout my 25-year career, it became my family. So, we talk about having our blood families, and then we have our academic families. And there were people who go there who mean as much to me as my blood family does. And then to have been acknowledged by them in the highest regard by becoming a fellow of the organization, which I think only 0.01% become fellows, was truly almost overwhelming. And I remember walking across the stage and hearing cheers in the audience for me was a moment that I will treasure for the rest of my life. Many people may have received it, not had that reaction, but that in particular is one that meant so much because of the people that I admire and respect so much having nominated me and basically welcoming me in the highest regard possible, in the highest way possible as part of that family. I once was asked at giving a presentation about being the first first generation Canadian, first generation at university, and not having those family networks to support you and celebrate you. And, I could receive accolades, but my family just doesn't get it. And so I remember telling them that you evolve to create a new family, a family of peers, a family of scientists and social scientists and community leaders. And they're the ones that you then turn to uplift you and support you. And I think that is why that family within the American Geophysical Union meant so much to me when I got that award, because those were my peers that have been cheering me on throughout my career. When I go back to my family, I'm the second youngest in the family of 5, and you fall back into that whole kind of structure. But my mom, I knew, was always very proud of me, even though she didn't understand it. And now that she's passed on, I'm sure she would still be proud. But my brother is, I feel, a great sense of pride. And I just share with him, like, I'm walking across the stage and shaking hands with the King of Sweden, and he goes, that's so cool, but we don't ever talk about it. They don't know what has led me there. And I've had to learn different ways to be able to share that with people. And again, developing that academic family or professional family is the way that I've been able to do that. I think it has not evolved over time. I think it's the whole system that has always been the most exciting to me. And so if one were to look at my academic journey, the degrees are in very different fields. One's in geography, one's in, biology, zoology, all of this. And I think each of those degrees enabled me to get a different perspective, a viewpoint, vantage point of understanding the system. And so to me, it's the complexity of the interactions and interdependencies of water with the earth, with the atmosphere, with animals, and not only how water intersects with all of those different parts of the ecosystem, but how the ecosystem in turn shapes the water. And that's where you have the biology or the geology producing things that are hazardous to other organisms who drink the water. But I think in that system also is not just at the basal level of interactions of chemicals, but it's also the impact it has on humans within that system. And so I always need to be empowered by the so what. And yes, the so what can be discovering something, but I've never been someone who was satisfied with that. I think it really comes back full circle to the impact that I witnessed of my mother being a prisoner of war, coming to Canada, being an immigrant, having nothing, having to really work for nothing, to always want to give back, and to see that I wanted to make other people's lives a little less hard and maybe a little bit more joyful. And so I love the fact that I could take my work and take it into outreach of humanitarian work or advocacy work or affecting change. And so that's all part of that system to me. Water is everything. Water is the basis for health and well-being. Water, yeah, it is everywhere you look. Water was either part of its creation, the creation of what you're looking at, or essential for its existence. So to me, water is everything. It's almost like yeah, I can really appreciate in some of the indigenous perspectives of nature and the spirituality of it and the role that these different elements, these forces of wind, water, air, fire have. And to me, water is one of those governing forces, and essential and creative and beautiful all at the same time. I would say believe in yourself, believe in your ability, and not to allow fear of the unknown to guide your next steps. I feel like I'm a late bloomer, Elsa, as a result of being shy and being fearful. And like I feel like I'm going to be going for decades more, just because there's so much fun, and the being creative is so incredible. I have so much more energy to expend in this area. I just wish I started earlier, and that's why I think that I mean, you can't go back. So what advice would I give? I mean, if I didn't go through what I did, I wouldn't be who I am today. So I don't know. What would I tell my younger self? I would say, you're going to be okay. It's going to be good. And lean into every opportunity you have, because it's going to be incredible.